This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so yesterday we were till here. We said this is how we write a JSON file, and we said our JSON file was looking something like this. And we basically had accommodated three different teams: a development team, a QA team, and a DevOps team. Each and every team wanted a different requirement. That the development team wanted it in, let's say, something like DevRG and a different, let's say, location, a different replication model, and etc. And we were able to accommodate them. Now we also said that okay fine, we want to include containers inside it, and I went ahead and declared an array known as containers and opened up an array, and then I declared three different containers here: test1, test2, and test3. And I asked you all to write a logic for it. Okay, I asked you all to go ahead and write a script logic, and a couple of people also messaged me telling that they have written the script logic, which is great. So please try this out, guys. Please try this out. Let me know if you are facing any issues. I'll be okay to go ahead and give a demo on top of it. Or do you all want to give me a demo right away? Like if you want me to give a demo, I can write a logic for it. But I want you all to firstly try it out. So anyone who needs me to go ahead and give the demo right away? Anyone has any concerns with that? But please don't hesitate in telling that if you're not getting a logic, please don't hesitate in pinging me. I'll make sure to, kind of give the demo or kind of give the script out for you. Okay. I'll also make sure to, let's say, create a file share location where I'll save all these scripts and etc. so that you all can use this for a reference. Okay. Now, one thing is that yes, writing a JSON file, writing a PowerShell script in order to create the infrastructure. PowerShell is a very useful language, especially when you're working with a cloud like Azure. If you're working with a cloud like GCP or AWS, I would say it is Bash scripting or Linux or something. That kind of knowledge is something that you require. But when you're working with a cloud like Azure, you primarily work on something like PowerShell scripts out here. Now, the question here is how efficient is PowerShell in creating the infrastructure? Meaning, I have the infrastructure here. I have, let's say, something like 1, 2, 3 storage accounts out here. Let's say I have 300. Okay. The time it takes to create one storage account is somewhere around 3 to 4 minutes. it uses the first storage account, goes to second, then third, and etc. What if 300? It's 300 into 4 minutes, just 1200 minutes of your script runtime. But normally PowerShell scripts kind of fail after they run for about, let's say, about 120 minutes, 2 hours. Like 2 hours is a maximum runtime, and after that it will fail. Also, PowerShell is an imperative way of command writing. What do I mean by this? Is that you have to design a logic for it. If let's say you're missing out on any loop, you're not closing something, and let's say you're not kind of implementing the loops properly, or you're basically say doing some errors out there in the script. As someone who's starting with the PowerShell script, it'll be a bit difficult to kind of debug this out, that where the script is breaking, what is happening with this, and etc. So I would say PowerShell is not a great way in order to go ahead and build your infrastructure, meaning infrastructure as in creating a storage account and etc. But let's say if you want to manage a created infrastructure, let's say you have a storage account, you have a resource group and etc. Let's say if you have 100 storage accounts, you want to basically identify what are the storage accounts which are not in LRS and get them down to LRS and GRS depending upon the requirement. PowerShells are great. So management of an infrastructure or management of something that is already created, it's a great way to do, no doubt. But creating an infrastructure, not the best way. It's certainly one of the ways, but not the very best ways. Best ways basically that is available out there in the market. So what is next? The better way of doing it. Now this is called, or basically what the topic what you're going to go inside is known as a declarative way of scripting. Till now we have seen something known as imperative. This is what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about two things out here. One being imperative. Imperative meaning user has to know a lot of things before going into, let's say, and doing a lot of scripting. Because when we started off with Azure PowerShell, right, we did not start with Azure directly. We said what PowerShell is, what's the syntax of it and etc. I didn't right away said that okay fine, let's create a storage account or let's create a resource group, right? Because you need to understand the syntax of it. So it is syntax specific. And you need to write a logic. You need to write a logic, basically, let's say something like if loop here, for loop here, and how to close the loop and etc. So not the very best way in order to create an infrastructure. Reason being, I said three storage accounts. Each and every storage account is taking 3 minutes, so it is somewhere around 9 minutes, right? 9 minutes. Not a, I mean, this is not a huge time. This is okay. But what if there are not three? There are 300. Now, what you have to do is that you have to write a logic in order to parallelly create everything. Polymorphism. Like when you come from, let's say, a very heavy coding background, right? There are concepts like polymorphism, serialization, and everything. So you'll have to implement something known as parallel logics and all that stuff. So not a best way in order to basically reduce the time interval and etc. That is where declarative way of writing command writing comes into picture. Declarative, not heavily syntax specific. You need to know a little bit of syntax, and the only syntax that you need to know is JSON. How to write a JSON. That's it. Parallel logics handled by, let's say, this particular technology. You don't have to write your own logic to go ahead and kind of do parallel. I mean, you don't have to write logics to basically explicitly write logics to make sure it creates parallelly and etc. So that element called polymorphism and etc. is taken out. So this makes sure it is user friendly. And also, a declarative way of command writing is the best way to create an infrastructure. If it's not there, if it's you're just starting from a scratch, it's the best way to go ahead and create an infrastructure. And it gives you something like called a reusability. Like the best way that is out there is reusable. It's like very reusable. Now, the example that I can give about an imperative way of command writing is what we've been doing till now, which is PowerShell. This is imperative in nature. Declarative way of command writing, there is something known as ARM templates. Full form, Azure Resource Manager templates. So before we get here, guys, what do you know, or what does it basically, what do you all know about something known as template? When I say it is template, what do you know by template, or what do you understand by template? Anyone? Pre-made. So reused. So for example, I can give you a very bare basic example that we have email templates. When we were back in schools, we had letter writing templates telling that okay fine, you have a body, you have something like this, just put whatever you need. You can even customize it. The same way, here the concept is that can I hold my entire infrastructure configuration in the form of a template? Answer is yes. I'm doing the same thing out here, but I'm just holding the configuration. I'm not writing a template. I'm just holding a configuration, but I need something external to help me out build my infrastructure, right? So what I can do is I will now use something known as ARM. Now, how to get started with ARM? In order to get started, or in order to write something known as ARM, you need something known as an ARM template manager server or Azure Resource Manager server. Now, when I say server, please don't get afraid that you know what you'll need to install a lot of things. Nothing. All you need is a Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code by default comes with JSON. All I want you all to go into the extensions, marketplace extensions. Go here and install something, or just search for something known as ARM. Let me expand this. You have these two extensions out here called Azure Resource Manager by Microsoft. Microsoft is the developer of all these things, Resource Manager templates, etc. So it says Azure Resource Manager by Microsoft. This is something that I want you all to install. Second, you have a third-party publisher known as ARM Template Viewer by Ben Coleman or something like this. Please install these two. How do you install it? Very simple. Just click on this install. I mean, just click on this extension. Now I have an uninstall button because I've already installed it. In your case, you'll have an install button. How much time is it going to take? Hardly 30-40 seconds. That's it. Once you install it, let's close this. Just say Control N. It'll open up a new file. And yesterday, what we did is that we selected and we said JSON. We wrote it in a JSON. Today, what I want you all to do is after you install it, just type ARM. You have Azure Resource Manager language coming up. And just click on this and it'll start giving you something like a blank page. Okay. The very first thing what I want you to do after you get this blank page is that now it's kind of giving me an error, right? It's in red right now. It's giving me an error. The only thing that I need to start writing a template, or the only thing that I need to know to start writing a template, is the syntax of it. Let's start with that. I will say ARM and it's loading some suggestions. It says ARM exclamation. Just say enter. I now have a blank template with me. So I didn't do anything. I just said ARM and I just said an enter. I now have what? A blank template with me. This is the skeleton of an ARM template. This is the skeleton of the ARM template. So it's just giving you a skeleton out here. And the very first thing of the skeleton is that it starts with what? An open and a close brace, indicating that it's a JSON object. Yes, it's a JSON language, indicating that this is all written in JSON. So whatever that you had, or whatever basically that you had a knowledge of JSON, we'll just extend it right now to ARM templates. Now it starts with something known as schema. $SCHMEA, schema. Now what is schema is that very simple. It's just telling that, okay, fine. Who's developing this out? Microsoft. All these templates are developed by Microsoft. Now Microsoft needs to authenticate these templates that, okay, fine, you are using the right one. So this is the header of the template telling that, okay, fine, this template is taken from, let's say, or this particular skeleton is taken from this particular link. You have an entire JSON here where just Microsoft is validating that, okay, fine, you are writing from, let's say, a proper tool, a recommended tool like VS Code, or let's say a recommended tool like Visual Studios, or you're writing a proper template. Do you have to do anything here? Nothing. You don't even have to, we don't even touch this header. It's just there. Good, not a problem. Second thing comes in known as content version. Now, even this we don't touch it. By default, whichever template we work on has a content version of 1.0.0.0. You can change it to 2.0, 3.0. It's just for versioning, meaning you are working on a version called 1, working on a version called 2. If you don't change it, nothing's going to happen. There is nothing that is going to happen out here if you don't change this out. Now there are something, now in this template, what I don't want right now is functions. I don't want something known as functions. I am not using it. And I'm not using something known as outputs. So I'll just take this out too. We'll talk about what functions are. These are advanced ARM templates and etc. that comes in advanced ARM templates. We'll talk about it. But this is the template what I need to work on. This is the bare minimal template what I'm working on right now. Now you have something known as what? Parameters. You have something known as what? Variables. Third, you have something known as resources. Let's do a bottom top approach, meaning usually people talk about first parameters and then variables and then resources. But let's get to, let's say, the crux of it. Now I won't touch parameters, I won't touch variables. We'll talk about what they are, how they are used, and etc. Let's say resources. And what is this, guys? It's an array, meaning you can declare what? Multiple objects. And what kind of an object do you declare here? you declare what do you want to create. Let's say you want to create a storage account because that's what we know about, right? So what I'll do is I'll go inside the array. I'll just say enter and I'll just type in ARM because ARM is the language, right? Hyphen storage is what ARM hyphen storage. It will create a storage account. I'll just say enter. That's it. My template is ready. My template is good to go. I didn't do anything. I just did two steps out here. I just typed in ARM hyphen exclamation. It gave me a skeleton. I went inside the resource. I'm now declaring what resource that I want here. And it said, okay, fine, you want a storage account? Take a storage account. And this is where let's go into the storage or let's go into the resources and understand a couple of things out here. So this is an object, right? It's starting with a curly brace, ending with a curly brace. Line number 7 to line number 20. If you're confused where the lines are ending, at line number 7 where it's starting, you can collapse it. It'll collapse the entire, let's say, object out here. And now it says, okay, fine, it's starting at line number 7, ending at line number 21. And the beginning of everything, like the beginning of an object, it says name. It's asking you what is the name of your storage account. I said storage account 1. Is this okay? Yes, no, maybe. No. Name should be unique. Again, it should follow all those characters. So let's do one thing. In order for the name to be unique, let's change this to something like dev stor acc to abc 000, something like this. And then very importantly, type. Now, how does Microsoft, let's say you will be using this template to create resources, right? In PowerShell, if you want to create a storage account, you are specifying a command telling that new hyphen az storage account. So Microsoft is understanding that, okay, or Azure is understanding that you want to create something, what, a storage account, because you're giving a specific command. But you're not giving a command here. You're using a template right now. And when you come with a template, what Microsoft is telling is that, okay, fine, can you please give me what kind of a resource do you want? And it says by default it is giving you, because you typed in ARM hyphen storage, it is telling you the type of the resource that you want to create or you would be looking at right now is Microsoft.storage / storage accounts. This is the type, or this is known as resource identifier, RI. A resource identifier out here, which is just telling you what kind of a resource do you want to basically go ahead and create. Coming down, you have something known as API version. Again, this is completely for Azure to understand where your template is being picked up from. You don't have to change this, don't even have to, kind of look at this. It says the API version is the latest, which is 1.4.2021, because the template was developed at that point in time. So I'm just giving you that particular template out here. You don't have to do anything out here. Third is tags. What are tags, guys? Identify a resource. So I can have multiple tags, right? I can say display name is storage account. I can say team, owner, and etc. And I am mentioning these tags inside the flower braces out here, telling that these are multiple objects. So what I can do out here is that if I want to declare another tag here, I'm just following the basics of JSON. I want to declare another object. I'll say comma, enter, owner, xyz@gmail.com, team, development. You can specify, or you can end up specifying multiple tags out here. Like I have 3 tags, you can have as many as you want, tagging your resources. Now you also have to declare the location of your storage account, but I am not declaring the location of the storage account as East US2 or West US2 and etc. Rather, the template is doing one thing. It is giving square brackets and it is telling resource group dot location, meaning wherever your resource group is, I'll end up creating this template in that particular location. This is called a predefined function. It's a function out here, just telling, okay, fine, you will basically create a storage account inside a resource group, right? Because you need a resource group. So before you deploy, I will use this particular parameter to go inside the resource group and get its location. You can do that, or if you want to basically specify that you want to create an EastUS2, I can just delete this out. I'll say East US 2, right? You can either give a function or you can just give a East US 2 out here. Then you have something known as kinds. You have blob storage. You have a couple of things out here. I'm taking something known as what? Storage V2. Whatever that I was using, whatever that I was doing using a PowerShell, I'm just passing all those parameters here in the ARM template. Finally, very importantly, you need the SKU, right? SKU meaning the replication. Now it's telling SKU, and then it is having two parameters out here. This is where I am. It's telling SKU. It's again an object inside which it's telling name is premium LRS, tier is standard. Now I don't want premium. I will say okay, fine. It is standard LRS. So I'll edit this premium and I'll say standard. And I'll say what? Standard. Done. My template is good. Like, since I am explaining this each and every line, it took me somewhere around 10 minutes to write it. But imagine if you're just writing this template. It'll just take like a minute. I didn't do anything. I just said ARM and then said ARM storage. That's it. And I changed my name and I changed the parameters that I need. That's it. With minimal effort, I'm able to create something like this. Now, how do I use it? Now, I have a folder called JSON handling. I'll just say, okay, fine. I'll say JSON. So this is a .json file, guys. It's a JSON file out here. So I'll say storage arm.json. I'm just saving this out. And in here, right, you have something known as outline, which will tell you what are you creating, how are you creating, and etc. It's a great way to handle things out. Meaning, if I click on outline, not this one, sorry. If I click on ARM template outline, and if I slightly expand my screen here, it says, okay, fine, this is the schema. It highlights the thing here. Content version. This is the parameter. This is the variable. And inside the resource, you're creating what? A storage account. And inside that, this is the name, this is the type, this is the API version. There are a couple of tags like display name and etc. And finally, locations, queue and etc. So it's a good way to handle things out. Okay, it's a great way to handle things out. And I also have an I button out here, right? In the top right corner, I have an I button here. I can just click this. It'll tell you what your ARM template is ending up creating. It says, okay, fine, you're creating a storage account. Now, one thing I'd like to do before using my template is Control A to make sure my template is properly formatted and etc. Go into, let's say, Google. Just say JSON end. Go into this particular site called a JSON lint online validator. Paste your template here. Validate your JSON. Just scroll down. It's a valid JSON file. It says, okay, fine, this is a valid JSON file and etc. Now, what I'll be doing out here is this my template. I have my template with me. What I want right now is to make sure I take this template to my Azure portal, because that's the end goal that I want to achieve. I want to take this template to the Azure portal, and at the end I want to create a storage account. How do I do that? I'll just come here. I'll say, firstly, I'll say deploy a custom template. You have something known as what? Deploy a custom template out here. I'll just click on that and I'll go into it. It says custom deployment. And by default, it's giving you something like, okay, fine, I have a couple of templates with me, like, creator, virtual machine, and etc. I would say, you know what, no, I don't want to do all these things. I want to build my own template. I want to start writing my own template. I'll say build my own template. And it's just template editor. And I'll say, okay, fine, load a file. Okay. I'm saying load a file. And I'm saying, okay, fine, I have this file in my hedge drive JSON handling folder. This is the file that I have. This is the ARM template that I have. And I'll say, okay, fine, this is the file. Please open this out. And says loading complete. I'll say save. And now it's asking me, okay, fine, which resource group that you want to create it in. I'll say, okay, fine, I do not have a resource group. So I'll say this is something like storage RG ARM. And since I'm creating my storage account in ECS2, I'm also putting my resource group in ECS. So it can be in any location, not a problem. Finally, I can say, now before you go ahead and create it, right, you can also visualize this out. That what you are creating and all. This is known as resource visualizer. Same thing what we did in, let's say, in here. I'm visualizing it. That what I'm creating and etc. That's it. I'm saying, okay, great. I'm saying resource visualizer is like great. This is what I want to create. And I can say review and create. And it says, okay, fine, this is a custom deployment template. Now, once it says, okay, fine, it's validating, it says validation is fast. I'll say create. That's it. It says now initializing deployment. It says submitting deployment and etc. Let's go here. And let's see what's getting created. So at this point, I am just aiming to create a particular storage account. That's it. So it's understanding what my template has, taking my template and deploying it onto Azure portal. Okay. So which one do you think is easy, guys? ARM PowerShell? ARM? It's easy to build and etc. Now it says, okay, fine. I am creating you something known as what? Dev store to ABC, something like this. Okay. Any questions here, guys? And it took a second. I mean, it took even less than a minute. And it went ahead and created my resource known as dev store ABC. And this resource should should have some tags. It has some tags. It's a storage account name, team, and etc. It's created in standard hot LRS, standard V2, and ECS2 in this particular resource group. Okay. Good enough till here, guys. Any questions till here? So by default, what happens is that if you don't give any access tier, right? By default, it will create it in hot. It's a default parameter. It's not a mandatory. It's a default parameter. If you want to change it to cool, you can mention access tier and change it to cool inside the template. You can mention that, not a problem. So it's not a mandatory, but the mandatory parameters are these: name, type, API version, location. These are the mandatory things. Any template, any resource, these are the mandatory things. Okay, good enough till here, guys. Any questions till here? Anyone? Any questions till here, guys? Anything? Anything? Anyone?
Hi, Kiran.
Yeah, hi.
Kiran, if we need for three storage accounts, so what we need to
Mhm.
change here at a time?
Okay, great. So thing is that If I need 3 storage accounts out here, what do I need to change? We'll look into that. This is known as resource iteration. Let's say if you want multiple resources, how do you approach it and etc. We'll do that. We'll do a demo on that as well. Apart from that, any questions before we move ahead?
Okay.
Okay. Now this is one way of deploying the template. I'm using what? A custom deployment. I firstly came into the Azure portal. I said deploy a custom template. I said build my own template and I deployed it. I said edit your template. You can load the file. I can just copy and paste this out also, not a problem. Just copy and pasting it out. Now I am now deploying it for the second time. Same, everything is same. I have not changed anything. What will happen ideally? What should happen here? It should throw an error, but it won't. Here, these are known as incremental deployments. So, if you do the same thing with PowerShell, it will throw an error. If you don't have an if-else loop, right, it will throw an error. It will definitely throw an error telling that, you know what, this storage account with this particular name already exists. So I cannot go ahead and create this out. ARM doesn't do that. What ARM does is ARM does a comparison. ARM now does a comparison. It says, okay, fine, this is the template file. It's a JSON. It says, okay, fine, you want to deploy this template. Okay, great. I will now do a comparison with Azure Resource Group. Whatever is there in Azure, there is some ARM, I mean, there is some basically resource there in Azure, right? I'll do a comparison with it. I'll see what is the property that is changed. Like, let's say if you are changing a property from standard LRS to JRS, it'll just say, okay, fine, I won't touch anything. I'll just update this property. I'll just do an update. If you're not changing anything, let's say if you're not changing the name, if you're not doing anything, you'll basically the ARM doesn't do anything. It'll just say validate. It'll say, okay, fine, all the resources are in place and I won't do anything. But let's say if you change a property like location, put it to SQS2, it will throw an error because location cannot be changed. You cannot change the location of a resource. It'll throw an error here. Whatever parameters which cannot be changed will throw an error. Now, what if I change the name? He'll create a new one. It won't throw an error. It will create a new storage account here. These are known as incremental deployments. ARM works this way. That's the reason it's called a declarative syntaxing. That telling that, okay, fine, this is a declarative syntax. This is how ARM really works out. Now, I can go ahead and redeploy this out. I can just say save. I'm not changing anything. Same RG. I'll say review and create. I'll say create. So it will initialize the deployment again and it won't change anything. He'll just say, okay, fine. This is what you want to do. Great. Not a problem. I'm okay with this. I'll go ahead and deploy it out for you. It didn't do anything. It took a second, right? Let's refresh the screen. It took a second. It validated my resource. That's it. It said, okay, fine. This is the validation that I'm seeing, that all your resources are in place. So I'm not doing anything out there, which is great. So you wrote this template out right now and you are giving it to your client. And you know, your client now complains that, you know what, you've given this template, great. You've written, you put a lot of effort. Appreciate that. But the requirement of me or what I require is a reusability. Meaning, just like we did a parameterization concept in PowerShell. What did parameterization do? It said every time you run a script, it said, okay, fine, please enter some parameters so that I can create something new for you. If you enter the same parameter, I'll do an if else and I'll say it's already there. Now my client is saying, you know what, great. I'm taking this template, I'm deploying it every time, I'm getting the same storage account. But my intention was not that. Every time I deploy it, I need a new storage account out here. I need what? A new storage account out here. So I am not allowed to do a hard coding of my value. This is called hard coding, where I'm declaring that, you know what, this is the storage account. Whenever you deploy this template, please go ahead and create this particular storage account. Now, if the client has to take this template, he has to go here each and every time when he goes inside this particular custom deployment. He has to say edit your template, paste this template out here, and edit this name. Let's say he needs a different name, different location, different SKU. He says, okay, fine, I'll edit this name, edit the location, something like West US2, not East US2, and edit, let's say, this one to GRS. Then deploy it. This is easy, but it's easy because there is only one resource. There's only one storage account. Let's say if you're creating hundreds of resources using this template, then imagine how many places the client has to update it, right? The same issue we had in PowerShell also. That's the reason we took something known as a parameter block. We said these are my parameters. That parameter block is substituted by this parameter block in ARM template. Parameters for reusability. Telling that, okay, fine, these are not hard coded values. These are values that can change. All the values that can change or will change should be declared in this particular block known as parameters. How do you declare it? Just go into this block, just put a quote out here, and I'll say new parameter. Do you want to create a new parameter? I'll say yes, I want to create a new parameter. It's saying what is the name of your parameter. I'll say storage account name. I'm just giving a name to my parameter. That's it. A local name that I can be using. I'm saying storage account name, and very importantly, it's asking the type of my parameter. Type is a string. Here it can support string, array, boolean, integer, etc. etc. This is a name, right? So it's ideally a string. So I'm selling the or I'm telling the data type that I'm declaring out here is a string. And I can say, okay, fine, this is what I need. That's it. I have not done anything. Here you have something known as a metadata. You can say this is the name of the storage account. Okay. You can give descriptions out here. Not mandatory. It's like tags. Just give a description so that anyone who's looking at your template will understand what to pass here. Now I also want to declare another parameter known as what? Location. Because each and every time I create a template, I need a different storage account and different location what the user wants to, and a different SKU. So three things out here: name, location, SKU. So can anyone tell me how do I declare another object here? Comma, enter. Again, I'll say something like this. Oh, sorry, this is not the right comma. So this is where I think it's come into picture. So my resource is starting at 5, ending at let's say somewhere around 10. After which I can give a comma, new parameter. New parameter, I'll say it is location. I'm again telling that the location is what? String. A data type of what? A string out here. And here the metadata, I have something called description. I'll say this is the location of my storage account. Finally, I have another parameter that I want to declare, which is called what? SKU name. So I'll again say new parameter and I'll say SKU name. Again, this is a string. In the description, I'll say this is the replication model. I'll just say save. As and when I give the parameters, it is saying you have 3 parameters that you have declared in your template. And you can click on each and every parameter to see where the parameter is starting. Let's say expand this out. You can do a selective and see where it is starting, where it is ending, and etc. Is this okay, guys? Until here, are we good until here? The question is then, how do I use these parameters in my main block? This is the main block which is creating my resource. Now, if I deploy my template, it will still end up creating a resource with the name dev store acc2abc000. It will basically say the location is east west 2 only, and it will say that the SKU that I'm declaring out here will be standard LRS only. It won't change anything because this is like using a param block in PowerShell. So in PowerShell, you use the param block, but you are not passing that parameter to your command. So in PowerShell, what we did is, let me fall back there. How did we declare a param block in PowerShell, guys? Param, I'll say param, open and close parenthesis. This block, right? This param block is being represented now by something known as parameters in ARM. And I'm declaring multiple parameters like, let's say, storage account name, comma, location, comma, enter SKU. These 3 parameters are this 1, 2, 3. This is how I'm declaring in a JSON format. Now I'm saying, okay, fine. New hyphen AZ storage account hyphen name of the storage account. How do I pass the name right now? Dollar storage account name. Because I have declared a parameter, I'm using that parameter. I'll say dollar storage account name. Hyphen, I'll say resource group name. So I'm just writing the command here. I'll say some sample RG. Hyphen, then you have SKU name. What is the SKU name now? Dollar SKU name. Finally, location, dollar location. So whatever I'm passing in this particular line, so I'm not completing my entire command. So I'm just giving a sample here. Whatever I'm passing in the param block, I am passing them, or I'm making use of them, or I'm referencing them. Sorry, I'm referencing them in my code, like dollar. In the same way, how do I then reference my parameters into my resources? Because resources is the section that is ending up creating you the resources, right? And I said for reusability, I want to go ahead and declare the parameters out here. And what I did right now, or what I'll do right now, is this is how I will refer my parameters here. I'm just deleting this out. And inside the quotes, very important, this is the syntax. Inside the quotes, I am opening and closing square brackets. And I am saying parameters, go into the parameters. Now it's telling what is the value. Give me a value for your name. I'm saying go into the parameters and pick up a name called storage account name. This is how I am declaring the parameter out here. So what I'm doing is that I am saying, okay, fine. This is a predefined function known as parameters, which will go into this block and see or look out for a name known as what? Storage account name. And it says, okay, fine. This parameter or this value known as name, which is an important parameter, okay, fine. I'll look for this particular parameter here. Okay. In the same way, can anyone help me? How do I now declare location now? Again, square brackets, parameters, location. Same way, parameters, SKU name. Done. Declared parameters to my template. I'll copy the same template. I'm not doing anything. I'm just copying the template, or I can just load the file again. And now it's loading the file and it's saying, okay, fine, all these are the files and etc. I'll say save. I'll say, okay, fine, storage ARM. Now, do you see this? Your client doesn't have to edit the template directly. Do you see why these are coming in here? Because you declared that these are parameters in your template. Now it's asking you, okay, fine, can you give me the name of the parameter? Because without this, I won't be able to go ahead and deploy your template. Now see how easy it is for you. Because right now, if I am the end user, I don't have to know what is ARM. I just have to know how to load my template, which is pretty easier, right? I just have to know how to load this template. And here it is telling, okay, fine, you know what, you loaded the template. I now understand that there are a couple of parameters out here. Can you please give me this? I can say, okay, fine, dev store ABC000 CUS, central US is something that I'm creating in. I'll say this is central US. I will say SKU name is standard underscore LRS. Done. That's it. I'll say review and create. And I can say create. So I'm making my templates absolutely reusable, right? Reusability is the crux of this. And now this will go ahead and deploy a new storage account every time when the client passes a new value here. If he passes already a value, doesn't throw any error, telling that, okay, fine, this is good enough. I'll go ahead and create you something. And now it's creating a new resource group out here, saying dev store ABC000 CUS. Okay, guys. Any question here? Any questions here? Yes. So you can use PowerShell to deploy your scripts. So I'll also tell you how to use PowerShell and to deploy your scripts and etc. This is PowerShell especially comes into picture when we want to do a debug. That when the script is getting deployed, but you have a lot of errors, you want to debug that out and etc. We use a PowerShell script in order to deploy our template. You can do that. So if you want to try it out, you can try it. The command is new hyphen az resource group deployment. That's the command, and you can pass on the parameters. So you can look at this command here, which is called new hyphen az resource group deployment. And you have examples here. You can follow the example. It says resource group name and the template file name. That's it. You can go ahead and declare this particular thing and you can deploy it out. And if you come down, it says template parameter file tag values and all these things. You can omit this out. You can just take it until template file and you can try it out on your Azure account. I'll also tell you what is all that stuff and etc. Now one last thing out here is that great, the client is able to go ahead and declare the storage accounts and everything. Great, not a problem. Now the thing here is that I want to now restrict a user to create a storage account only in East US 2, West US or North Europe. These are the 3 approved locations from my organization. Also, I only want to restrict the user to go ahead and create the storage account in, let's say, standard LRS or GRS. Any one of them, that's it. So what I'll do is that I'll come down to my template out here, and in the location block, I'll enter and I'll say default value. By default, if someone wants to deploy this template, please deploy it in something like East US 2, a default value. And I'm also saying that the allowed values are, or let's say the allowed locations are East US 2, Central US and North Europe. These 3 things. I'll say allowed values. And here I'm declaring an array. It can be multiple values, right? And do a comma here, otherwise it'll throw an error. I'll say East US 2 Central US, North Europe. These are the three locations. Finally, SKU name. I'll say the default value of my SKU name by default if anyone deploys it out without giving a parameter, it is standard underscore LRS. But I can also allow you to deploy either in LRS or GRS. Standard underscore LRS or standard underscore GRS. Save. Again, I'll take my template out, do a custom deployment, build your own template. I can either load my file or copy my file here. Copying my file here, this is okay for me. I'll say save. Now, do you see here? It's giving you a drop down of allowed values out here, telling that please select from only this drop down. I cannot let you type in anything. I'm not letting you type in. You only need to select one of these trees. And the reason it is showing you ECUS2 is because you have defaultly said that it is ECUS2. Now the client can come here and say, okay, fine. It's Central US, North Europe, or ECUS2. These are the three values that I'll allow you to do it. And it's either LRS or GRS. Now you cannot just go ahead and say it is standard GRS, RA, GRS, and etc. You cannot do that. This is something that I'm disallowing. I'm saying this is something that I don't want to allow. Okay. Any questions here, guys? Yes. Sorry, district based on the. So you're talking about a conditional deployment. Like let's say if I'm a contributor, I only need to deploy it in something like that. You can do that. For that, you need to assign RBAC over a subscription. You can say RBAC over a subscription, and there is something known as Azure policies that come into picture. So you can do that. A little advanced, but you can do that. So again, there was one question that how do I create multiple resources? This is something that I'll take tomorrow because I don't want to rush things out right now. So this is something that I will take tomorrow onto or tomorrow's very important concept will be on resource iteration, on how do you do multiple resources, what is the best practices and all by doing multiple resources and etc. Any questions with this concepts, guys? Anything here? And this is one of the best way to build an infrastructure. You can go ahead build an infrastructure with this. And this is one of the the best available tools in the market today. This and Terraform also. Like we are going to see Terraform later. We'll see what are Terraforms and etc. And today's market, like there was a lot of demand for ARM earlier, but right now the market is like 50-50. Like 50% of the companies are using ARM, 50% are using Terraforms because Terraforms are more easier than ARM. So that's the reason I'm firstly introducing ARM so that we'll understand what is the difficulty and we can basically go into something easier. It'll be easy for you all to understand that. Any questions here, guys? Anything here?
Yeah, we take
Just a second. Sorry. Just a
we
second.
have
Yeah, please go ahead.
storage ARM and Terraform. Then do we really need to use PowerShell in real time?
You'll definitely use PowerShell in real time because when you are working with Azure, right, you build infrastructure. Great. You're creating storage accounts. But how do you maintain it? Like, what is your maintainability? Like, how do you make sure to, let's say, check the storage accounts that are regularly not in, let's say, GRS and get them back to LRS and all that stuff? You need someone to maintain all these. That's where PowerShell comes into picture. So that's the reason I said PowerShell is great when it comes to maintenance. ARM is not that great when it comes to maintenance because ARM is great to build an infrastructure, to create something which is not there. PowerShell is great to maintain what is already in there. So you will use a combination of PowerShell, ARM, Terraform. You'll use a combination of all these things out.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Any more questions, guys? yes, sorry, variables, right? So I will explain what variables are. So normally, to just give you a hint on what variables are, let's say I don't want anyone to change, let's say, the replication tier. I don't want this I want this replication tier always to be in LRS. Or let's say the kind of storage account should always be in V2. What I can do is that something that is not changeable is something that you can declare in variables. Saying how do you declare a variable? Very simple, key value pair declaration, kind storage V2. That's it. This is the only declaration that you need in a variable. If you want to add another variable, do a comma, add multiple key value pairs inside it. Now storage, I said kind is V2, meaning this is a fixed value. You cannot change it like a parameter. This is a fixed value out here. How do I refer it? Instead of parameters, I will use variables. This is how I refer it to it. So whatever is fixed, whatever that you say that, okay, fine, this is fixed, you can declare it in a variable. Whatever is changeable, you can declare it in parameters. Now, if I deploy this template, right, it won't give me a column for variable because that's fixed. You cannot change it. Okay. So these are the, or this is the difference between a variable and a parameter. Any questions here, guys? Anything here before we close? So the default value, the use of a default value is, let's say your client is in a hurry. He, let's say, forgot to, if I don't give a default value, you're getting a blank there because you can go ahead and enter something. There's nothing in there. Your client is in a hurry. He just took the template, deployed it out without passing a default value or without passing a value. Your template will fail. He won't be able to understand because the issue is that your client, in all likely, may not be someone who's technically expertise. Because if he is technically advanced, then why will he hire you? Right? That's a simple question. So he may not be technically expert. He might be, let's say, someone who's just starting things out. He just needs someone to, let's say, build things out for him and give it to him. So that's the reason you're putting all these checks, telling that, okay, fine, by default, please create it here. Just in case the client even forgets it, you can go ahead and create something out here. So just to fall back on, meaning the default is this. If you want to change it, you can change it. Okay. Okay, guys, and that's it from my end today. And we'll meet tomorrow and we'll discuss more on ARMs and we'll see what are, let's say, resource iterations. How do you do that, and what are the best practices and etc. Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.